Hello and welcome to the GovHack Digital Conference. My name is Matthew Watt and it's a privilege to be broadcasting today from the traditional land of the Gadigal people. We pay our respect to their elders past, present and future. Today we are hearing from Alicia Mosbar, the Chief Data Officer of IP Australia, who will be presenting the talk from IP Australia. IP Australia is an integral agency of the Australian government dedicated to administering intellectual property law across the country. This encompasses the vital duty of handling the registrations of trademarks, patents, designs, and plant breeders' rights. Alicia will provide insight into the identity and function of IP Australia. Additionally, she'll highlight the commendable work they've recently done in collaboration with the Office of the National Data Commissioner. Their shared goal is to redefine the portrayal of government open data sets, making them even more enticing and accessible for all. We encourage everyone to engage in this session by posting questions and sparking discussions in the YouTube chat. We will reserve time at the end for a Q&A segment where Alicia will be able to answer some of your questions and queries. Now, without further delay, let's dive into this enlightening talk and deepen our understanding of IP Australia's pivotal role in our nation's intellectual property framework. Over to you, Alicia.
Thank you, Matt. So, as mentioned, I'm the Chief Data Officer for IP Australia, and I'm here today to give you a brief overview of what IP Australia do, and also take you on a bit of a journey for where we've been in our open data world. We've done a couple of different things, and we've had open data available on data.gov for a number of years. And as Matt mentioned, we've got this exciting work that we've done with the Office of National Data Commissioner, ONDC, on Data Place. That's really helping us to not only better understand IP Australia, our IP Australia data sets, but also improving the maturity of what we do as a federal government organisation with data. So for those who aren't familiar with the IP system, we administer the Australian government's intellectual property rights and legislation relating to plant breeders' trademarks, design rights, and plant breeder rights. We contribute to the innovation system more broadly by using our skills and experience to advise government and Australian businesses to make the most of their IP. And we have a vision of creating a world-leading IP system that builds prosperity for all of Australia. And one of the things we do as part of that process is make our data publicly accessible. And we also publish a really interesting, exciting report on the status of IP rights annually, and that's available on our website. So what is intellectual property? Anytime you create something new and original, you're creating IP. Our Australia's IP laws provide a legal framework to protect your creative IP through a rights system. So as mentioned a couple of times already, we have a number of different parts of the IP system. Some of them are registered IP rights, and they're ones that we as an organisation monitor and administer. And then there's unregistered rights. And so there are things like copyright, trade secrets, and circuit layouts. They're not part of the registered IP system, but they are in additionally rights. So just to emphasise that we look after the plant breeders' rights, which protect the commercial rights of new plant varieties, patents, and these protect the functions or features of devices, substance, methods, or processes, and help us to understand what is new, inventive, and useful. In the designs area, we protect the overall visual appearance of new and distinctive products. And in the trademark space, we look at protecting signs that distinguish goods or services of one trader from another. So why would you register rights? Well, they give you an exclusive right to determine who can use your IP and how it can be used. It gives you the opportunity to sell and license, promote or develop your products while limiting competition for set periods of time. and it reduces the chance of your idea being replicated and passed off as those of a rival trader, and they can also be sold for financial gains. So that's really very quick 5-minute overview of the IP rights system. And you might think, well, what does this mean about data? So we've been collecting information and data about the IP rights system for over 100 years as part of our responsibilities for the Australian government. So we have an absolute wealth of data. But what we're all here to understand today a little bit more is, well, what's its purpose from an open data and a data sharing perspective? And before I go into too much detail, I want to talk briefly about what is the benefit of open data and what you need to do to make it more open, and just touch on the role and the importance of metadata, because obviously if there's no standards for making data available, then it does make it a whole lot harder. Now, before undertaking this role with IP Australia, I've had a long history of collecting and curating data and making it publicly accessible. So there's a whole lot of other organisations around Australia, and there's a whole lot of locations apart from data.gov that you can find and access publicly open data. Now, some of the reasons for doing this is around making that richness of data that government collects a lot more valuable to both the government, but also to us as a huge community. So there was a study commissioned back in about 2016 from the infrastructure, which took a look at what the potential value of open data would be. And so amongst other things, there was advice at the time that was created that making this data, or particularly non-sensitive data, more available by default would basically drive this huge economic and financial benefit to organisations. And so for quite a long time, public data, it's almost been 10 years since this study was actually created, to have a look to see how much data will be available. And for now, I think everyone can see there's been an absolute explosion in data, both from a usage perspective, from a collective perspective, but also from people's sort of understanding of what they can do with it. Now, IP Australia, we've been publishing our open data on data.gov for quite a long period of time. We've got a large volume of data sets, and anybody can access that information at any time. So it's a pretty simple process to put your information on data.gov. You need to document the data that you have, and you need to put some information alongside that, or metadata. Now, data.gov doesn't have a particular ISO certified metadata standard that you see accompany data sets, particularly in the spatial world, but it is somewhere where we can provide some simple information and give people the opportunity to find what data is available and what is accessible for anyone to use. IP Australia, we've got 19 data sets available currently on data.gov. And these are data sets that we've been curating for a large period of time. And we're actually looking at, in the next few weeks, publishing an updated version of some of our data sets, which is really exciting, because fundamentally we collect a whole lot of public data, and it's fantastic to see that we can make it available. And we know from both this particular use case, but also from the work that we've been doing with the ONDC and the day-to-day interest that we have from other organisations across Australia, that there's a whole lot of use and value in the IP rights data system. So not too sure how many people who are listening in this evening are aware of the Office of the National Data Commissioner. So the ONDC, they administer a system called the Data Place, which is helping to support better and improved access to data. They have a data discovery function, which is supporting government agencies to build and develop data inventories, and to help build out an Australian data catalogue. Now, this is going to be very different from data.gov.au. It's a process that you need to be accredited to access data and also accredited to supply data into the platform. And so DataPlace itself is going to be a digital platform where participants and others can manage particular data requests and support the administration of the data scheme. So IP Australia, we participated in a pilot project with the Office of National Data Commissioner last year to help us better understand what data we might have that we could make more available through this particular activity, and to also help us develop some better processes as an organisation around how we document our data, how we manage who's got access, even simple terminology such as understanding the custodianship and the stewardship of our data was really transformed through us participating in this particular pilot activity. Now, all of the ONDC work and DataPlace is all because of the Data Availability and Transparency Act scheme, which came into place last year. And this process, so this is ONDC slide, this is not a slide from IP Australia. This is all about how the data scheme has been established, how you go through the accreditation process, how you might request data from other organisations, and the principles and so forth. So if you're interested in finding out anything further about ONDC and the DataPlace, this information is all publicly accessible and give you some guidance about who can be involved. So if you're working for a university or for a government, be that state or Commonwealth agency, and you are interested in accessing data from another government agency, DataPlace is the location where we're recommending that individuals go to. And the reason that you would do that, put your data on there, is organisations such as myself, such as IP Australia, we are encouraged and we are approached by many organisations to make our data more accessible to those agencies. And those requests can take a whole lot of time to unpack, to understand, to then communicate what data we can and we can't provide, to understand the needs and the requirements of the organisation that is accessing that data, and then provide a mechanism to share that information. We also still have to go through licensing processes to make sure that we're making the data available in a way that is appropriate and fit for purpose. And we do this without actually charging any funds from those government agencies that are making requests. So having a system and a scheme that can both give us some certainty around who the party that is requesting that data from, and then to the people who are providing that data, give them some certainty about the data that they're requesting, what is it about, how should it be used, is actually a really fantastic step in the whole open data community. So we participated in the pilot project throughout last year. We were one of 21 government agencies who actively engaged in understanding how this would actually work more broadly. So as part of this pilot process, we basically sat down with the ONDC and our data custodians across our agency to understand what data we might have that we could be better at describing, making more accessible, basically building out a data inventory of all the things that may be of interest to other government agencies. What was a big change for us as a government organisation was working with the data custodians to then also better describe our data. So this is coming back to metadata. We have lots of data. We know what it is in terms of our internal naming conventions, and we understand who in the organisation can have access to that information. But we don't have the sort of deep descriptive metadata that you see as part of a standard process. So this work has been fantastic in helping us to look at what are the key terms that other Australian government agencies are using to describe their data, and which one of those or what group of those makes sense for us as an agency. So we're a bit different from a whole lot of other Australian government departments in that we don't collect a whole lot of information about the general public. We have this specific function administering the IP rights. So our stakeholder community and the kinds of data that we're collecting are quite different. But even in understanding that, we've been able to use the same standard set of terms to describe our data that other agencies have used. Plus, we've also created some other terms that are fit for purpose for us. So this process we work through help us to unpack and understand both our context, what the breadth of the data that we had. We agreed with the ONDC on the data standards that we would use, and then we agreed with our data custodians what additional naming conventions we had. We then built out a consolidated data inventory, and we tested that with the Office of the National Data Commissioner about how that would work in this context. And what it has done for us as an organisation is really helped us to grow and develop our data maturity and provide us some great groundwork for future growth opportunities in the data governance space. So data governance is something that many organisations we don't have huge numbers of people working in data governance areas. And it's fantastic to be able to be part of a pilot project like the Data Place project with the ONDC to help others across the organisation who don't work with data on a day-to-day basis have a better understanding of the value and opportunity of making data more accessible. And what we have found through this particular project is rather than having lists of data assets in various different systems and curated by different parts of the organisation, we now have a single data asset register, which is a fantastic asset to have, because it means that rather than somebody wanting to request data going to a number of different people across the organisation, we have this single source of truth where we've described our data asset, we know who the custodian is, we know how to describe that data, we know all the things about its availability, how recently it's been updated, and so forth. And so we've got this fantastic source of truth. We've identified which data sets we think should be shareable and could be shareable through the scheme, which again is also a fantastic state to be in. The 19 data sets that we've currently got listed on data.gov, it says 19, but many of those are either updated versions of our open data products, IP GODS, so the 2017 version, the 2019 version, and so on. So they're not necessarily the kinds of new data sets that people are hoping to see when they look at that data catalogue. However, through this process, we've been able to identify other data sets that would be more accessible, particularly to the universities and to other government agencies. So again, really helpful. We've worked on and updated our metadata, which again, I think is a fantastic resource to have in an organisation. And again, this is about having consistent naming conventions, being able to point to a data set and have an understanding about what that data is, and not just from the perspective of somebody in the data team, but also from the perspective of the data custodian in the organisation. So again, strengthening our knowledge and understanding of what that data is, how it can be used, how it should be used, and who is ultimately responsible for it. And it's really helped us build a much better internal collaboration with our internal data stewards about what is the role of data in the organisation. So IP Australia, we're about 1,000 people. We're based all across Australia. My team, the data team, also based right around Australia. I'm in Hobart. My team from anywhere from Brisbane through to Adelaide. We just haven't employed anyone in Perth or Northern Territory yet, but we will. And so projects like this help us as these remote and hybrid teams to come together to talk about data with the consumers as well as the people creating, as well as the people looking after the data. And again, it just strengthens the knowledge and the data literacy of an organisation to be able to focus on these activities. And we've found that by undertaking this process, we've really built much more of a community across our organisation about what we can and can't be doing with our data, who can access it, who can be doing different things with it, where it should be residing, where it lives on our data platform, a whole lot of fantastic benefits to that process. So obviously super exciting times in the IP industry around making data more available. As mentioned earlier today, we are looking at publishing more updated data on data.gov.au. So that in itself, that idea sprang from the team looking at the data that we publish and trying to understand what would be more beneficial to the community as a whole in terms of the data that we make accessible. Also, because we have so many requests from external people wanting to use our data, we found that if we can publish a different version of the data, this will potentially free up my team and not have to have them responding to data requests all the time if we can provide data in a slightly different way. We're also involved in a whole of government data cadet program, and it might seem like it's a bit of a sort of a different concept to bring in, but we're super excited to see new people getting involved and interested in having data careers in the APS. So if anybody who's listening today is thinking about maybe undertaking a data cadetship, this year these were open to people in remote parts of Australia, and they're looking for people who are studying part-time, looking for part-time work. So again, it's super exciting to see where data careers can take people. We have this new standard for metadata to describe our data assets. And the next step for us is we do this particular process quite manually, and we'll be looking at how we might implement a tool or a product or a solution so that we can get to a point where we've got not just a clean metadata description of our data sets, but something that is connected to our data platform and to our custodians, and that can be kept and updated and maintained as a single source of truth, so we don't move away from the fantastic asset that we've created. And we're really helping to make more data open and available. As a team, we have conversations with a broad variety of organisations from across government and non-government organisations who are looking to do more things with our data, particularly in the innovation space. And we're super excited to be participating in GovHack this year. And I can see that there's a question in here about what projects we're looking for, which I won't actually answer. But it's just exciting to see that more and more people are interested in accessing our data, and we just want to make it available in a way where people can understand what data we have, and people have got an opportunity to take data away and get the insight that they want from the information that's available to them, and really unpack what the innovation journey might be. So I think that's everything that I had to say tonight. I've got a chance to ask questions. There are a couple of questions in here. The first question is, what are you and IP Australia looking for in projects coming out of GovHack? That's it. So without talking about the topic that we've put forward in the question that we're asking people to look at, what we're really interested in people doing with our GovHack question this year is having a look at the question that we're posing, having a look at the insight from the data that we're providing, and then supplementing and augmenting that question with data sets from other locations to really unpack what that question could mean and how it might deliver value and insight, more particularly around the kind of question that we're posing. So we will have a little bit of data there. But it's about how we can broaden our understanding of our topic with what else you might be able to find. We're not looking for an app as such. We're really looking for that data insight. So I'll leave it at that. And will the new data likely be available for GovHack? Yes, it's likely. We're just going through some testing processes right now. We do hope that it will be available for GovHack. It is likely that it will be available. We've had an internal naming competition for that, and we'll be publishing the name of that new data set as soon as possible. Any other questions?
I think that was it for the questions for now, Lydia. Thank you very much. It was a great talk. It's great to hear the work that IP Australia and the Office of the National Data Commissioner are doing with the Data Inventory Project. And I can see how this work will ensure a strong future for data sharing and continued increase in government data. One of the things you discussed was around the intellectual property rights and retaining them. And I think it's an opportunity that we raise that GovHack projects are being released open source. However, under the open source licenses, the team still do have the opportunity to protect their IP rights through those licenses. So thank you again, Alicia, and we're happy to have you with us today. And I believe we've got some upcoming sessions for the remainder of the week for the digital conferences. So tomorrow we've got generative AI using in the GovHack projects. We have preserving and connecting with heritage. We have Digital Connections event on Thursday. And then on Friday, we have Getting to Know the National Freight Data Hub. So thank you again, Alicia. Happy to have everyone watching today, and thank you all for watching.
Thank you. Oh.